Tuesday with Tamika. Thank you guys so much for joining me for yet another episode of Tuesday with Tamika, where you guys already know what it is. We believe in lifting as we climb, turning those trials into treasures, living a life to inspire and not impress, opening up and allowing God to fully restore us, and loving as if we have never been hurt. You guys, I have been working out. And it has been a journey back to my fitness. It has really been a journey for me to get back to where I used to be in my fitness journey. And what I realize is there is so much experience, so much knowledge behind me that when first got back into the gym, the coach, the trainer that I'm working with, he said, "Wow, you have these natural like twitch muscles." And it's really because it's muscle memory. Because of all of the work that I've done in the past, my body naturally knows what to do as I'm even though it's been like 4 years since I've been like training as hard as I've been training, my body has naturally gone back to what it's known. Do you guys know that that's the same for trauma? When we're put in situations that trigger us, our body will naturally react to what happened to us when we were a child, what happened to us when we were a teen, what happened to us in that domestic violence relationship. It's really hard for anyone to have strength that comes out of those shadow places that you used to be in. But I believe just like we can turn and make it a positive, no all the things that you've been through, which is why I truly have had one of the cornerstones of this podcast being turning those trials into treasures. Because yes, those shadow parts of us are still there. Yes, those things that happen to us will cause us to have a muscle memory of trauma where we'll react in negative ways if they go unaddressed, if they go unhealed, if they go untalked about and exposed. I believe the greatest way to remove the shadow from us is to illuminate it and bring it to light. I believe that today's guest knows a lot about strength behind the shadow. And I cannot wait to bring him on, for him to share his story, for him to be able to give us some practical steps to move from that place of victimhood to victor. So without further ado, hey Seth, you got a minute?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate you. That was a awesome introduction right there. A lot of good points you're talking about.
Oh, awesome, Seth. I am so honored for you to be on the podcast. I can't wait for the TWT family to know a little bit more about you. Go ahead and tell them a little bit more about yourself, Seth.
Well, yeah. So right now, about to publish a book, which is Strength Beyond the Shadows. That'll be coming out later this year. Looking at probably November timeframe for publishing. And that's what I'm doing right. That's like the big movement right now. Along with that, I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a husband. I'm a father. You're talking about the fitness journey. I actually just got done running a 100-mile race last month, so that was pretty cool. I've done 7 ultra marathons in the last 9 months. I do jujitsu as well, workout, and a lot of that stuff. But aside from all that, I'm just a speaker, husband, father, and soon to be author. So my book is about overcoming adversity, trauma, the like you said, the shadows. It's it's my journey of what I went through, which for lack of or as simply as I can put it, was an absolute hell for 16 years, and I'm sure we will cover some of that, and I can get into that, or if you got other
Yeah,
questions, or
I
yeah.
I definitely want to get into that, Seth. And I loved, when we were doing a little talking before the interview, before we actually started, I was just sitting here, and I'm always so amazed by my guests that don't look like what they've been through. And it's a lot like, as an athlete, like, I am a former runner, which is why I think I have like that twitch muscle that my coach was talking about. My body naturally goes back to what it used to do for, years in my life. Um, it sounds like you have developed some type of strength beyond the pain that you have gone through. So what I'm saying or what I'm asking is 16 years of hell, there had to be something that made you say, I kind of want to reverse engineer. And I
Hmm.
want to start at the moment that you had the strength to do what most young men, little boys, because you were a teenager, couldn't do. So I want to start at that point that you found your strength to report your abuser. And I want us to walk backwards.
Yeah, yeah. This is a unique approach, so this is cool. I I was actually at my abuser's house. He had been molesting and abusing me for almost 6 years at this point, every single weekend. So we're at this point 300 to 400 occasions of sexual abuse. I had been raped multiple times, and I was actually raped this weekend that I was at his house, and he was in his 30s. I was a month away from being 16, and I was there with a younger friend of mine. We were playing video games, and my younger friend was having a bad day, and so the abuser, his name was Mondo. We called him Mondo. Mondo says to my younger friend, you know, if you're having a bad day, I can take you back to the bed and blow you, is what he says to him. And you know, we all laugh it off. I knew what was happening. I knew
Mhm.
that he was what he was doing because he had made those same jokes towards me over the years, and so I knew what was happening. And my younger friend goes back to the bed with him, and this was the first time that I had ever seen anybody else go back to his bed in that
Mhm.
capacity. And so I knew something was wrong. I knew that it was about to. I knew that what had happened to me was about to be carried on to him. And after enduring that pain for almost 6 years, I basically put in. I couldn't handle it anymore. I could not let it happen to somebody else.
Mm.
And so I went home that weekend. I called a friend of mine over. This kid is about 5 years older than me, so he was actually in college. I asked him to come over, and this guy, for the sake of the story, I'll say his name's Jacob. Jacob introduced me to Mondo when I was about 10 years old, and Jacob knew him because Jacob's parents knew Mondo. So that's how he knew him back in the day. Well, comes over, and you know, I cannot get the words out of my mouth. I can't say what happened. I'm just embarrassed and ashamed, and I'm scared for rejection, denial, all of the things, right? And I'm pacing back and forth in my room, and Jacob says, "He touched you, didn't he?" He breaks the silence with that, and I fall to the floor. I'm screaming and crying, and I don't even know, like, how to respond. I guess I'm just crying. My 6 years of emotions are coming out, and the next thing he says is, "Well, he did it to me too." And so my older friend Jacob, who is basically my hero, like he's like an older brother to me. I had no idea that he was molested and raped and all of those things. So everything that had happened to me happened to him for
Wow.
several years prior to me. So to answer your question, when I saw my younger friend about to be taken advantage of, I couldn't let that happen to him. So I re- I reported the guy, you know, that day, and that whole experience, that whole entire day is just an insane day. What happened at the hospital and everything following. So
Wow. Wow, Seth, gosh, that, man, it's so often you hear women break their silence and they talk about the abuse that they've experienced. But I think if the research shows that, like, 3 out of 10, or maybe it's even probably even higher now, of boys that are sexually assaulted, abused, and even raped. And a lot of times they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it because of all of those words that you just used: the denial, the embarrassment, the rejection, and maybe even fear of not being believed. Because I can only imagine, for 6 years of this happening, was he like a neighbor or like a family friend?
I met him through my friend Jacob, and he knew Jacob's parents, and that's
Okay.
how that so you know, by the time I reported him, my I was with my grandparents. They had adopted me, and so by that time he was a family friend. Like he would come to my house for holidays, and I had known his whole family as well.
Mhm. And so a lot of times and that is so typical for the listeners that are listening. I definitely want to just give a disclaimer because we are going to get into some topics that may be a little bit triggering. But also for those that are listening that something may has happened to you and you don't want to report. It is very typical for people to go many years without saying anything because there's this weird thing that happens. And I'm sure, Seth, you can talk to this because you love the person. You still love them. You still care about them. You still, even though they're doing this harmful thing to you, there's still like this relationship where you don't, and then the manipulation and the way that they like mess with your mind is so and like that's part of the abuse, right? That's such a big part of the abuse is the way that they mind manipulate you. So when that first happened, what was your home like before? Because you said your grandparents had adopted you and now you're living in a place, but I know that a lot of times abusers, they don't target the person that comes from a good home. They target the person that already has some struggles. What was your home like before?
Yeah, you know, I'll answer that real quick, but just for your audience too, the average age of reporting is actually 53 years old.
Yes.
So
Thank
just
you
so you
for
guys know,
sharing that.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, especially with, I think overall, but with
yeah,
religious populations, a lot because we're seeing a lot of stuff coming out with, religious leaders being caught up in stuff, and people are like, "Oh, she's 50 something years old. Why is she just now saying something?" That's very normal.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you
So
for sharing that.
yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, my life at home. So when I met Mondo, I was 10, and my life was not too crazy yet, but it was going down a bad path. My mom was a single mother. She had started to become abusive, and then right as I met Mondo, like had been right around the same time or within a few months of meeting him, my mom got a new boyfriend who, oddly enough, was like the I don't know what he was involved in the church. He was like the pastor or some sort of role like that at the church, and he got her addicted to crack and cocaine. And we moved into this house with him. I was 10 years old. I walk upstairs to my bedroom to see where I was going to be sleeping, and there's only two bedrooms in the house. My two sisters got the other room. I got this room. This room had hardwood floors that were all cracked, damaged, and split all the way across the floor because there was a 2 foot by 4 foot hole in my bedroom ceiling. So I could look up and see straight into the attic above. There was no insulation, no protection. This is in Ohio, and it's in September when we got to this house, so it's already cold. But we lived there for a while, and throughout the winter, the rain, the snow, with cold winds would come into my room at night, and so I slept on this little 4-inch mattress with a thin little blanket, wet the bed every night. Monday through Friday, there was drugs, violence, and abuse in my house. So that was what I was living at home. So I needed an escape, and like you said, they know that, and he even built that commonality with me. I don't know how much of it was true, but he told me that he had a single mom when he was growing up who didn't like him, abused him. He was bullied in school. I was bullied in school. He was very smart. He was a straight A student. I was a straight A student. So I like video games. He liked video games. I like football. He liked football. We had all these commonalities that he just kept stacking against me, and that's how he was able to play the game and win me over.
Mhm. And just like you said with the younger friend that, which gave you the strength to report it, going into, "Oh, you're stressed, you're having a bad day," that grooming process, it starts way before, the actual act happens. It starts with, "Oh, look, we're a lot alike. Oh, people don't understand us. we can comfort one another." And so as the abuse started, and lasted nearly 6 years, as a boy experiencing this, what were some of the things that were going on in your mind? And did you ever attempt to tell anybody?
Never attempted to tell anybody for multiple reasons, and I actually just kind of processed this maybe a week ago. I finally realized like why I never reported. But the things that were going through my mind were, initially when he first started molesting me, and it was just like him touching me. It wasn't to me. I was like, this is not that bad. Like whatever I'm getting, because when I would go to his house, it was pizza, pop, video games, coffee, energy drinks. Could cuss,
Mhm,
stay up late. There was no rules. You do whatever the hell you wanted. He ordered whatever food you wanted. It was awesome. Like I
mhm,
did not have that, so it was a really good time. And then he starts to molest me, and then when he started, it wasn't that bad. So I was just like, I don't think it's gonna, this is not that bad. Like I can handle this. But then there's also after they get their hooks so deep, after certain things happen, like he starts to perform oral sex, and he rapes me with his fingers first, and then like actual rape later on in life. You get you don't want to report. I didn't want to report. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want to, report him. I wanted to protect him. You have those feelings too. That kind of went away as I got older. Probably 2 3 years into it, I really didn't care about him anymore. But at that point, it was more about me. If I report him, I have to admit that these things happened to me. And
mhm,
so not only am I protecting him by not reporting, but I'm protecting myself in a sense of shame and guilt and embarrassment. I was terrified of so many things. I tell a story the first night he raped me. I went and sat on his toilet after he was done, and I was getting everything out of my body. And as I'm sitting on the toilet, I'm thinking to myself, like, why is my whole life absolute hell? And then
mhm.
also, if I say anything or if anybody finds out, they're going to think I'm gay. They're going to think I have HIV or AIDS. They're going to think I have diseases. I'll never like girls will never like me, you know. I'll never be married. I'll never have a family. Like you have all of these thoughts, and so um, yeah, those were the thoughts that I battled and why I held back from reporting for so long.
Mm. Oh, Seth, that is thank you so much. I know I have a good amount of male listeners, and I just pray that this releases something in them where they realize that none of those things have to be true just because this thing happened to you, but that shame and guilt are the two most toxic emotions that we can feel, and they literally get a chokehold on us that prevents us from. I remember the first time I spoke my truth. My one of my first abusers was my biological mom's boyfriend, and he would make me and my one of my siblings do things together. And when I spoke my truth and said something, people in my family didn't want to talk to me anymore. And so I had to deal with them not, whatever. And but I'm like, I know that I'm not making this up. So I think that there's so many complexities with telling the truth. So for people that may be questioning, like, how does this go on for so long? These are all the reasons, like Seth said. There's so many reasons why people are afraid to say anything. So, Seth, you literally have come out the shadows, and like there's so much strength that happens. Now, let's fast forward. You make that phone call, you report this. I want to say so many bad words right now. You report this guy, and what happens from there?
Yeah, this is really crazy. I actually got to meet the officer who handled my case, and I got to meet him earlier this year, and I'll actually be speaking with him at a conference in Ohio, in my hometown.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, later this year. So his name's Chad Couples, but he was a police officer in Bluffton, Ohio. I grew up in Lima, Ohio. This guy lived in the abuser lived in Bluffton, so it was in Chad's jurisdiction. And you know, we call the hospital, we go down there. This is a really good part of the story is and the only reason I remember this is because of the reaction in the rooms. We get down to the hospital and Chad walks in. I see his last name is Couples, and I said, Couples, like, is your wife Mrs. Couples? And he says, yeah. His wife was my teacher about 3 or 4 years prior to reporting. So his wife was my teacher at like the height of my abuse, and which is really crazy. And
Wow.
yeah, and I had met Chad before. Like he had because he was a combat veteran from Iraq. So he came to school on like Veterans Day or Memorial Day and would like kind of show us stuff. And so I had already seen this guy before, which is real crazy, real coincidental. So me and Chad kind of hit it off quick and we start talking. And I just explained to him in the darkest, deepest details that I can of what had happened to me. And I actually have all of these police reports in my possession now. I just got them. So I have all of my handwritten reports from when I was 15, Chad's reports, everything, pictures from the um, what I'll get into here in a second. But
Mm,
anyways, I was telling Chad everything that happened, and I go back into the nurse's room, and the one of the nurses is asked me, "Do I have any dirty clothes that have not been washed yet, or do I have?" When was the last time I was at his house? Like, do I have anything that would possibly have some sort of evidence on there? And I told them, well, he just raped me 15 hours ago, and I have not taken a shower and I have not changed my clothes because I knew I was going to report him. And right as I said that, like everybody's mouths just dropped in the room. They're just like blown away. They couldn't believe it because I was walking around in this guy's filth.
mm,
So, anyways, they take my clothes off and they test they test my whole body. They test my underwear and everything. They find his DNA, and I told them, I said there's a jar of Vaseline next to his bed that he used on me, and I said there's 2 or 3 towels there too, and I guarantee you will find my DNA on those towels and in that Vaseline. And so Chad goes up to Bluffton a couple hours later, finds Mondo, takes him down to the station. um, Mondo denies everything at first, and then eventually admits some sort of guilt. And they go to his apartment, and due to my reporting and the way I was able to explain to them everything, they go straight to his room and they were able to find the Vaseline and the towels. And I have the photos of that, like, where they go to his apartment and they take pictures of everything before they touch anything. And so I have all the photos of the Vaseline, the towels that were used on me now. And later on this year, when I go up to speak in Ohio, I'm going to be in possession of the video interviews or the video interrogations that they had with Mondo. So I'm excited to have those as well. But that's what happened with the reporting and the arrest. So they go up there, he admits some sort of guilt, very little, and then about a month later, he pleads guilty to 11 counts of sexual misconduct.
mm.
And it was between me and my friend Jacob. So he abused, molested, raped me and my friend Jacob for in combination about 10 years between the two of us. There's no telling how many he had prior or how many during or would have been after. And because of his plea deal, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for 10 years of pleasure with two little boys. And what's crazy about that too is one, he ran a haunted house in his hometown every year on Main Street. Um, thousands of kids would come through and he would hand candy out to every one of them. Um, Two, this is where I'm going to get into within a couple of years, hopefully, is changing some laws because in Ohio, they couldn't charge him for rape because we couldn't prove that he had raped me before I was 14 years old. So it was just sexual misconduct. I have the reports. It's all sexual misconduct. That's all it is. They're felony charges, but it's just sexual misconduct. It's not rape. It's not anything more than misconduct. And so he got a 10-year sentence, and he would be free today. But fortunately enough, he died um, about a year before he was supposed to get out. He died in prison.
Wow. That is insane. Wow. Please, whenever I don't know if we could do anything here on the West Coast, but if there's anything that we could do to sign petitions to get these laws changed, to post it on social media, because that is insane that he only got charged with misconduct. I have never in my life said I'm glad that somebody's dead, but this will be the first that because I'm glad that he cannot hurt anybody else. I am super glad that you are here, Seth, to tell your story and to with such strength and such confidence. And you have like a beautiful wife. 2 amazing children. You are doing beautiful things in this world. Motivational speaker. Just your book is getting ready to drop. I want, after all of the crap that you've been through, there was still a seed of resiliency, still a seed of strength. And now let's exercise that muscle and let's talk about what's going good for Seth now. Tell us more about the other side of this trauma. What's going good for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good side of my story because there's a so what at the end of everything, right? Like when something bad happens, it's like, so what? So what did you do? What happened next? You know, did you quit? Did you give up? Did you fall to drugs? Did you do this or that? And fortunately for me, I never was an alcoholic. I was never addicted to drugs. Um, I, served my country for 8 years, been all around the world. Like I said earlier, combat deployment in 2019, got out of the army. And when I got out of the army, I got into construction and I won some national awards. I was recognized by the National Association of Home Builders in Las Vegas. And then I was the number one construction manager for the third largest company in America, third largest home builder in America. And when I won those two awards, that's actually what really sparked like the catalyst of me saying, "Okay, I'm going to write this damn book now." Because when I received that award in Las Vegas, I stood on this podium talking to all these people in this room to get this award, and I probably looked like a privileged young man
Mm,
who probably grew up with mom and dad, probably went to college, which I had not graduated at that point, probably was given these opportunities to succeed. And if the people in that room would have known the amount of pain, suffering, trauma, violence, I'm on this call with you for it's been, 30 minutes, and this is just 30 minutes of the 16 years of absolute hell that I endured. So there's no way to comprehend or fathom what I endured as a young man, in a short amount of time. And that's what I wanted to say on that stage. Unfortunately, I bailed on the speech last second. I kind of panicked and backed out, but it's led me to where I'm at today, and that's writing the book and speaking now, and that's what's going good in my life now is I have a platform. I am getting involved with other organizations. I'm going to be keynote speaking at a gala in August here in Georgia. I've got several events lined up here in Georgia. I have that event lined up in Ohio. And I think that by the end of this year, once my book drops, I think that is going to send me on a projection for next year. I have very high hopes and expectations, but I think it's going to exceed everything that I can imagine.
oh my gosh, I completely stand in complete agreement with you, and I will definitely be praying for your uninterrupted godly success because if no one else deserves it, Seth, you definitely do. I often tell people when I get on stage, people see this pretty lady with all, the nails, and I'm like, you guys have no clue. You have no clue, and then I open up my mouth and I start to tell my story and they're like their mouth drops, and I'm like, that's what qualifies me. That's why I can relate to anybody of any culture, of any nationality, because pain and love are the two universal emotions that we all can feel. And I honestly feel like you're my brother and I am like rooting for you, Chad or Seth. I am so rooting for you that I mean, just your wildest dreams that they all come true. Tell us where we can be connected with you. How can we support? How do we get pre-orders for the book if you have all that set up? And most importantly, how can we just support this mission of everything that you're doing? And then lastly, I just threw a whole lot at you. Lastly, I want you to leave us with maybe three things for listeners, people that work with kids, people that they see that there's something wrong with this kid. What are some some just some hope that we can do, or some help that we can do with kids that may be going through this, or even adults that have experienced this, that they have not even had the courage to speak out about it?
Yeah, so first off, the easiest way to find me is Instagram. That's really the easiest way to find me is Seth Gale, or Go Beyond the Shadows is my handle. You can also find me on pretty much any social media platform. So Seth Gale, Go Beyond the Shadows. Um, and then I do have a website, sethgale.com, Gehle. That's my last name. Um, so if you go there, it will prompt you to sign up for my book. And when my book is released, I'll send out mass emails to let everybody know. So that is that. My book should be out probably by at least mid-November. That's what we're shooting for right now. And then as far as supporting the mission goes, and like what I'm doing, I'd certainly have a focus on saving children, saving the most, you know, precious asset that we have in this world. Um, Child sex crimes, trafficking is the number one leading industry in the world. It's $850 billion a year, and there wouldn't be a supply if there wasn't a demand.
Mhm.
So if you think about that, that's people that are spending over $800 billion a year to buy children and to use them. So to support the mission, people need to talk about this. They need to talk to their kids about it. You said some statistics earlier. So it's, as of right now, the latest that I know, it's one in three girls, and it's a little bit more than one in four boys. It's basically one in three boys as well will endure this in their childhood. One in 10 will report. Over 78% of the time, it's a family member. Over 90% of the time, it's like 98% of the time, it's somebody you know.
Mhm.
Now, the problem with that is we don't talk about this in schools. I have reached out to schools in my area, and I will reach out to any school in the world to talk to them about what I went through and to talk to kids, children, as young as first grade, second grade, third grade, to talk about what happened to me because they won't talk about it in schools. And the issue with that is if 98% of the time it's somebody that you know, if 78% of the time it's a family member, do you think that that family member is talking to them about it at home? So
Mm.
the only other place that we can reach these freaking kids to save their lives is when they're away from their parents and the school. And it is not an attack on their parents, it's not an attack on the household. It is an effort to save the billions of children that are trafficked every single year. That is the effort. It is not about polluting their minds. So I'll get off my high horse there. That's how you can support the mission is by speaking to your children and advocating for this mission. So the last thing I'll say about that, I have been told in schools that will tell children that they can be whatever gender or sex that they want to be at kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. They respect all of these gender appropriations, but they won't let me go in there and tell them that their dad is not supposed to be raping them when they're in first or second grade.
Mm.
That is my, it makes me sick to my stomach that schools won't let people go in there and educate these kids. Oh, that's the
Mm.
last thing I'll say about that. Three ways to help um, for anybody going through it. One, I would say the shame that I held and that most people hold back from not reporting. Um, I understand that shame, but when you report, that monkey comes off your back. I can completely understand as a young child that you will carry that probably heavier than I did as an adult. I have had time to kind of sit with my situation, and I live a life now that nobody can bother me. But as a kid, I can completely understand that going through school and reporting would be incredibly traumatic. However, um, it needs to be done, and that is the hard thing that you must do. You have to do these hard things in life, and that might be the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. It certainly was for me. but it's made me a better person because of it. A couple other things that would help anybody is reading, writing, and speaking. Read books. Read books on communication, leadership, personal development. Read these books about growth and challenge and efforts. I'm not a religious person, but I know you are, and so you probably know this verse. But it's a verse in Romans something, and I love some of these Bible verses. But there's a verse in Romans something something, and it's about suffering, and suffering produces character, or excuse me, suffering produces endurance, endurance creates character inspires hope in others. So there is some value in your suffering, there's some value in your pain, and you have this undeniable endurance and character that can inspire people. So with reading, you'll find those things out. Speaking about it, it helps you process what you've gone through, what you've done, what you've been through. It When you may ask me a question like you just like this, you're the first person to ask me to go in reverse order in my story. So that allows me to look at my story from a different light. Okay, well, yeah, what happened last? And so when you speak, that's the power of it. I was just on a podcast last week. Last week, I just found out this answer to shame of why I didn't report. I just found that out last week because it took me 100 times to tell my story to be like, that's why I didn't report. I was protecting myself. So
Mhm,
that's the power in speaking. You have to do it 100 times, 1,000 times, over and over and over again. And the last thing is writing. I'm writing a book, and as I'm going through my final edit right now, I will be honest with you. I have been blown away. I've been emotional. I've been shocked at some of the things that I wrote in my book because I couldn't believe one that I wrote that I was able to explain that and articulate it, but also that I endured that pain, and I'm able to go back there and fix some of the words too. Maybe, hey, this word didn't sit right. Maybe there's a better word. Maybe there's a better way to explain this. But as I'm talking to you right now, these words are coming out of my mouth and they're gone. Now they're
mhm,
they're going into a recording for a podcast, but if we were just speaking in a room unrecorded, speaking helps, but the words are gone. So that's the
mhm.
power of writing is that you write them down, they're there forever until you delete them or revise them or edit them to make them better and stronger. So reading, writing, speaking, I think are three incredible ways to really help you overcome and heal and understand, process the whole thing.
100%. I tell my community all the time, we put it on paper on purpose. Like there's a reason for us to journal and write and, do all of these things. Seth, I am incredibly just encouraged by where you're at now, where you've been, and where you're going. Like, I am so grateful for you to be able to grace the TWT platform and share your story so authentically, so just vulnerably. We need more of this, especially for men to really share their story. And I just, a little something that I want to add is, a lot of times with men or boys, if it's a woman, they say it was not rape. It was not, and it definitely was. Anyone over the age of 18 that engages with a child under the age of 18 is wrong, no matter gender, no matter any of that. It's completely wrong. So we do need to get in these schools. Parents that are listening, stop telling your kids stranger danger and tell them uncle danger, auntie danger, cousin danger, neighbor danger. Like, no one should be touching anyone inappropriately, and we need to have these conversations. It is not going to open them up to want to have sex or want, like, we need to change our mindsets so that we're able to heal these babies, protect these babies. Seth, I honor you. I thank you so much. TWT family, we will have all the links to Seth's information in the show notes for you guys to go get on that email list so you can get that pre order of that book. We want to support him because I can already tell he's a man that's going to put back into every, money that he gets from these book sales. I know that he's going to put it back into this cause and he's going to do right by these children. So let's make sure that we go and support him and we get some orders of this book into the hands of schools or wherever they need to be so we can get his message spread across the world. Until next week, TWT family, continue to lift as you climb, continue to turn those trials into treasures, continue to live a life to inspire and not impress, continue to lift as you climb, and love as if you've never been hurt. Until next week, bye bye.